Have you ever been in a board meeting that really wasn't getting anywhere? We're going to help you fix that today on the Church Revitalization Podcast.
Hello, and welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast, brought to you by the Malphurs Group team, where each week we tackle important, actionable topics to help churches thrive. And now, here's your hosts, Scott Ball and A.J. Mathieu.
Welcome to the Church Revitalization Podcast. My name is Scott Ball. I'm joined by my friend and co-host, A.J. Mathieu.
Here we go.
Today we're talking about how to lead when your church board is divided. I guess let's head off at the pass. What if you don't have a church board? Put in staff. Is it an elder board? Is it a deacon board? Is it a personnel committee? Is it a staff team? Is it your strategic leadership team? It doesn't matter. When you have a team that is stuck, that is supposed to be leading in some capacity, and they're divided, how can you get undivided or unified? That's what we're talking about today.
Yep, let's do it. And let's dive right in. We got a few points for you today. The first one is, first of all, you've got to diagnose what kind of conflict or division you're actually dealing with. So there's a couple of different categories of this that we'll throw out for you today. The first one is more of a directional division. Like, we don't have unity around where we're going. And so this might be, I don't know, I was going to say this could be just more of a high level decision making, but not necessarily. You could even be down in the trenches or in the weeds and have this disagreement about where exactly are we going. So we need to identify or define this decision first of all, and be able to get past that. You know, and I've seen this so much recently, Scott, in teams that they're ships crossing in the night. They think they're on the same page, and then they start talking about things without identifying the true decision, and they're missing each other. Like, I thought you were thinking this, I thought you were thinking that. And it's because we're not coming back to like maybe a more foundational thing. Like, where do we have unity on and where is it breaking down? But so directional division is the first, and we can go into these more deeply here. The second one is a relational division, where there's just more of a personal conflict between one or many members of your team. So so let's talk about directional division first, Scott. Where are we going? This is a big deal. This is a big question.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about this all the time in strategic envisioning. I mean, this is the heart of why we always start with the foundational things first. Even if we already go, well, we're pretty sure we're good on our mission statement. We don't think we're going to make any changes there, or we feel good about our values. We aren't pressing when we go through strategic envisioning to make changes on those things. We are perfectly content to reaffirm what you already have. So we're not interested in changing them, but we are interested in reaffirming them and just confirming that everybody really is on the same page. You wouldn't be surprised, AJ, but those listening might be surprised that the number of times we come into a situation where the lead pastor, or the head of the elders will say, "Hey, we're all in agreement on our mission," and then I'm like, okay, well, we're still great. Then we won't have to spend a lot of time on this. Then we get halfway through the discussion, and there's not the kind of unity that they think there is on something that foundational, on what's working or not working about our mission statement, or what is or isn't our mission. And so that's why we always start there, because those cracks just grow. If we don't have unity around mission, then we're probably going to have some divergence on our values, which is going to lead to divergence on our philosophy of ministry or our discipleship pathway, which will then lead to division about our vision and where it is that we're ultimately going. And so that's why the strategic envisioning process is built the way it is to confirm the most foundational things first, and then move out to the things that are maybe bigger questions from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, imagine, we said, okay, let's work through organizing discipleship in our church. Let's work on our discipleship pathway. All right, great, let's do that. And then we're going down, and then, some people are like, wait a minute, I feel like we're not really emphasizing evangelism very much. The other group is like, no, it seems like that's the perfect amount. And then we talk about it some more, and we realize, well, the people that think a little bit is fine are like, well, our mission is like the great commandment, right? Love God, love people. And the other people are like, well, no, it's the great commission. We should be, making disciples. We should be evangelistic. And we're like, oh, well, we weren't clear on that. We weren't clear on our missional area before we started working on discipleship. So,
yeah, or they might even say something like, well, we believe in the Great Commission as the mandate of the church, but the way that we're going to execute that is we're just going to build people up and then trust that they're individually going to be evangelistic, but we're not going to do anything.
Yeah, we're not going to build any ministries around that.
We're just going to
send them out.
We're just going to send them out.
Yeah.
So all those things matter when you start getting to vision questions.
Yeah, right.
What does success look like? And that is a different kind of disagreement versus a relational one. And the hard thing is, when we have a directional disagreement, it can sometimes feel personal.
Yeah.
And the question is, and sometimes we can have a relational problem that we express through directional language. So I actually don't have we probably maybe do fundamentally agree on direction, but I just don't like you. So, and it may not even be conscious, it might be subconscious. So I'm just going to disagree with everything that you're saying. And it's incumbent on the leader of the leaders. And if you can't do this, then bring in someone who's objective to come in and try to discern what's the fundamental division here. Is this people not getting along on a relational level, or is there a disagreement at the at the directional level?
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. I mean, it's going to take a certain amount of humility on both parties within a relational disagreement to even admit maybe that there is disagreement, or I don't like the way they do something, or I don't like their theology on something, or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That has to come to the surface first. Like, it looks like there's conflict between you two. Let's talk about, where did that come from? Because we need to have a healthy board. I mean, the church depends on decision makers having healthy relationships together, because you can't put the church first until you've resolved interpersonal things,
Yeah.
because that, I mean, again, which is a humble position to be in anyway. Leaders, we can do a whole dive on servant leadership. I mean, the humility that it takes to be a leader is putting something or someone above yourself. I mean, when you're on a team, you're not working for yourself. You're working towards something common. And so these are all, healthy relational things that have got to be in place for a team to be healthy and to make good and right decisions for a church.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to like Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. Like the most fundamental thing is trust.
Yeah.
And so you do have to rule out, I think if your order of operations, maybe just first establish, are we brothers? Do we love one another? Do we trust one another? Do I believe that you want the best for the church? And do you believe that I want what's best for the church also? Do we have that common cause together? Do I trust you? And I think you do have to clear that first and make sure that there's not a relational disagreement or a relational division first. And if you go, no, I completely trust you. We're in this thing together. We're in the trench together. Then you can move on to then maybe this is a directional division and you can work through that differently. But if you're getting caught in the directional thing and you haven't resolved whether or not there is a relational division there, then even if you resolve sort of the symptom, if you've not addressed that root cause, lack of trust on the team, then you're going to continue to have issues. And I've seen this a number of times, AJ, on with leadership teams, is that they're just chasing problem after problem after problem because they haven't come to grips with, or maybe even accepted, the real problem is a relational one. I just don't trust this person.
Yeah. And you kind of touched on this a minute ago, kind of the opposite effect can happen And I mean, I'm dealing with this, with some coaching that I'm doing right now. We've got a theological difference between parties, and some of those people are making that personal. They're verbalizing a lack of trust in others because they don't come to the same theological conclusion as them. And so, instead of kind of keeping the disagreement perhaps at the level it should be, it's gone down to this personal level. Like, I don't trust you because you're not coming to the same conclusion as me.
Right.
And that's a real challenge. I'm not going to solve that for you today. I don't have the answer, but
that isn't necessarily your role to do it anyway. It's to facilitate the discussion.
But I think that it's just another example for this is defining what kind of division we have, which is we're still on point 1 here. So
let's move on then.
Let's move on. Leading to a decision. So what I guess we need to define how a decision will be made. Unanimity, unity, whatever that might mean to you. We often operate by consensus, but we need to have some ground rules or some rules of engagement before we begin to make a decision. Like, what is going to constitute a decision here? Do we all need to be in agreement? Do we all need to be in agreement on 100% of the details? And the word unity gets thrown around a lot, and it's tough to define that. So I guess maybe more the point to this point is define what success in decision making is going to look like for this, and operate. Everybody come to an agreement on that before taking it up. We do this in our strategic envisioning process. We operate by consensus. We define that as 100% of the team feeling 80% good with the decision. So it's not perfect for me, but it is close enough, and I can move forward, with it that way, feeling unified as a team about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have maybe some clear steps to help you make a decision and move forward. The first one is to name the real issue clearly. So stop dancing around what you're actually disagreeing about. That goes back to our first point.
Yep.
Just be really clear. Is this a relational thing? Is this a directional thing? And establish what it is that we're trying to resolve and get clarity around, and only those issues. The second thing would be, actually, one more thing on the first step is make sure all of the information is available to you. I think one of the reasons why things get stuck is the discussion just goes on continually. And people go, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. And, make sure that you've defined what the issue is and that you get all of the information out there so that you can set a decision deadline and go, okay, we're going to decide by this date or this time or in the next hour and a half, we're going to come to a decision, because eventually it just becomes unproductive. You need to be able to say, are you going to add any new information, or are you just going to say the thing that you have already said? And do you believe, I heard this actually from a guy I was talking with, I would give him credit, but I can't remember who said this to me. So if you're listening, I'm sorry, I'm not intentionally not giving you credit. But he said, ask the question, do you believe that I understand what your position is? Not do you believe that I agree with you, but do you believe that I understand what your position is? And you want to keep working until they can say, yes, I think you understand what it is that I'm thinking. And once you're there, now you have all of the cards on the table and you just need to decide. So that'd be step 2, set a decision. And then 3, define what unity means. Basically saying what you were just talking about, AJ. Mm-hmm. We don't all have to agree, but we all commit to support the decision once it's made. I always like to point out to churches that I work with, AJ, Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 through 19, that there are 6 things the Lord hates, 7 that are detestable to him. And on the list, number 7 on the list is a person who stirs up conflict in the community. And so the one thing that we definitely don't want to do is fall into the category of a person, of a thing that the Lord hates, which is being a person who stirs up conflict in the community. And so we don't all have to agree, but we do have to support the decision.
Yeah.
And it's really important.
It is. Yeah. Gosh, I mean, a decision is completely undermined if after the decision is made, people that participated in making the decision go against it, speak bad of it, stir up division. It would be better to have not made a decision about it at all, or to have reorganized the team to people that can agree to make the decision together, regardless of whether the outcome is what they find to be ideal. So,
yeah.
Okay. Our last point, we want to prevent division by clarifying authority before conflict. So, this is an interesting problem that comes up in churches and organizations, and that is having clearly defined governing documents around most things that say this group or person has the authority to make this decision or type of decision. You can't pre-think about every single decision that might ever come up for a church or an organization. So you have to either go down the road of categorizing decisions, or coming up with some broad areas in which a certain authority is vested in a certain group or person. Hopefully most of the time that's a group, but yeah, this is another important thing, because it's usually in the conflict times. Every church member becomes an expert in the constitution of the church when there's division in the church, and a vote is disagreement.
Exactly.
We're going to hold everybody to the letter of the law now. Well, what is the letter of the law? So, the people that we thought could make this decision, if it turns out they can't, then they shouldn't. But if they can, it needs to be clear to everybody that they do have the authority to do that.
Right.
This often reveals function having or tradition having deviated from the written law, if you will. But, our constitutions is one thing, but we don't have anybody here that remembers it ever actually functioning that way. Mm-hmm. So, which that just opens up a whole other things, and
I could give a dozen examples of this being the case.
Yeah, for sure.
I won't.
Gosh, I worked with a church once. Their constitution designated the Sunday morning time for worship services. And I don't think they were doing that anymore. 8:30 a.m. and they were at 9 or whatever. So, there's we're not going to turn this into a best practices for church constitutions, but somebody needs to know what it says, and try to work within that.
Or change it.
Change it. Yeah. If it's not workable, if it's not working anymore, then change it.
Yeah. Or if it's unclear. That's very often the case, is that it's not clear who's responsible. And so that's a huge thing that I've done more of this in the last couple of years than I did in the previous, 8 before that. But working with church boards and elder teams and various leadership bodies to define policies around authority and decision-making, not because anybody is power hungry. I think that's the challenge, is that I think most people genuinely have a humble heart. They're not interested in trying to accumulate more power for themselves necessarily. I don't know, maybe some people are, but that's not been my experience. My experience has been, though, that when there's a lack of clarity around who has decision-making authority, it just leads to division and no decisions. So I like to talk with churches and say power is neutral. It's not inherently evil. It's not inherently good. It's just a thing that exists. Your church has authority or power, and it's vested either in a very clear way where people understand what the boundary lines are, what decisions I can and cannot make, or it's vague, in which case it's prone towards division. It's prone towards people who are willing to abuse power. It's when the lines are unclear, when I don't know what decision I can make, that you've created an opportunity for us to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
And so taking the time to be thoughtful about creating policies around authority and power structures isn't a mechanism for creating some sort of like terroristic regime inside of your church. It's a blessing because you're creating clear boundary lines where people understand how they can and cannot operate. And then it's up to then the people to follow those once those boundary lines are understood. And so I guess our third point is more of a preventative measure before you are in a. So if you're listening to this right now and you're like, my board's not in a conflict, well, then this is a great time to ask the question, are the boundary lines clear about what decisions the pastor can make, what decisions the board can make, what decisions have to go before the congregation? And is everyone understanding what those things are? And if it's not clear at all, then we need to maybe work on our bylaws and get that resolved. Or if it is clear in our bylaws, but people don't know, then we need to do some training to get people up to speed on what those things are. And obviously, it's much better to have those kinds of discussions when there's not an active conflict going on, because then it's not personal.
I think a lot of you are probably going to resonate with this because you've dealt with this either right now or you have in the past, or you may see that it's coming in the future. So I think this was a good topic, Scott, for today. I don't know. We are in the West. We are a very litigious culture, and that the church is not immune to it.
No, this is a great topic. Leading through division is part of being a leader. And so, unity doesn't mean that everyone agrees. It just means that everyone commits to moving forward together. And if you have a board member who can't do that, then that's a different conversation, because maybe you've got some board composition issues.
Thanks for being with us. If you're having issues around this, would like some support for managing healthy board structure, we'd love to help you with that. One of our certified guides would love to come alongside your church and walk you through that, or any of the processes that we've developed to help build healthy churches. So go to malphursgroup.com. You can connect with us there and talk about how we can help your church. Be sure and check out healthychurchestoolkit.com for some online resources that are amazing and will definitely help you in your day-to-day.
We have a course
work
on this.
We do have
a healthy church board.
We do indeed. So go get your 7-day free trial at healthychurchestoolkit.com, and yeah, go make plans to go through that with your board. That would be awesome. Thanks for being with us, everybody. We'll see you again next week.